chief, my Dekshi. He asked me to talk for us today. Today I look around and I see some descendants of other chiefs that are here, Little Crow and descendants of Red Wing and I think Ushasha and the Big Eagles. So our chiefs are still around, some of the descendants, and I think we're the only that has a hereditary chief that went from father to son. The Wabashas are the only ones left in this capacity, and we're sure proud of that. And we hang on to that heritage because that was taken away from us by the white people when they sent us out here, and they kind of vilified our chiefs and actually turned our people against them and got us in. And I want to talk about some of the things that our women went through here that really, really suffered here. And when I was growing up in Santee, I never heard of Crow Creek. No one ever talked about it. And along about in the 50s, when they flooded this area up here and bought the Indian land, we got a check for my grandmother. And she died in 1918, and I never knew her, and I knew my step-grandmother real well, but we had some property up here that they sold, and they sent us that check. So I asked my mother, I said, where's Crow Creek? Well, that's where we were at before we came here. I said, what is it, reservation? No, it's a bad place. No one talked about it. We don't even want to talk about that place. And so years later, I did the research on my family history. I knew it all, and the Campbells and the Wabashas are traced because the history books are full of them. And in 1967, Roy Meyer wrote a book called The History of the Santee Sioux. And it was United States Indian Policy on Trial, so I couldn't wait to get it. So I bought the book and I read it, and he traced our tribe through the first contact with the white men and how they dealt with us on the land and everything that they did to us and tried to help us, and then reneged on some of the things, and it showed what the Indian policy was to our particular tribe. And one thing, there was just a few lines in there about Crow Creek. They said, well, when the women got up here, they were picking the half-digested grain out of the horse manure to make soup. And then it said that many respectable women turned to prostitution to support their families. And that was all it said. And then I was in the Nebraska State Historical Society, and I had a book sale, and I picked up a little pamphlet called the Second Nebraska's Campaign Against the Sioux. It happened in 1863 when Sully come up here with Sidley, and Nebraska raised up a regiment of cavalry and came up here with them. And the commanding officer and one of his men both kept diaries. And in this pamphlet were their diaries. And Colonel Furness wrote that they stopped at Crow Creek, and he made some really uncomplimentary remarks about our women. He said they were out there selling their bodies, and they made fun of them, called them filthy hags. That's what he called them. It's in the diary. The Santee women were a bunch of filthy hags running around trying to get his soldiers to give them money. And I read that, and I thought back then, I said, I wonder why they never talked about Crow Creek. And then I read later, the rape victims don't talk about rape. A lot of them don't even want to know it. They won't admit to it. And I thought, here we got, when they finally went down to Santee, there was 900 women here, and 143 children and men. So our women really were suffered and humiliated here. And I wanted that known, because that's why they didn't talk about Crow Creek. And I don't know what you want to call that. Maybe the government would give a spin on that, call it consensual rape. I don't know. They'd come up with something, I'm sure. But that's what happened to our women here. And all of us here, a lot of us here came from those women probably that suffered here. And that's why when we put this monument up, and I'd read that way before we ever thought about this monument, and when I thought about what our women went through here, and then I thought about my Dakota grandmothers and all that, I counted 16 Dakota women that I was raised around at Santee. my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my great-aunts, and all my mother's siblings, cousins, that helped raise me. All the love they showed me. And they were strong, resourceful women. And I thought, well, I think that came from here. When you go through something like that up here, you pass that on to your children. And today I want to say we got a lot of strong Dakota women. And I think it came from here. Because when you get put in those kind of conditions, it either makes or breaks you. And so today, I've always been proud to be a Dakota. Today I'm proud to be a Dakota. And I love all of you, and I'm proud of you.